on that. Committee members, on your spot, you'll see a draft proposal of our report. You'll see it big bold letters that says draft, and what I mean by that is final draft. No, well, not yet, because I want your really want you to take a look at it. We're going to go over the recommendations at the end, but I won't be going through all the hard work that Sarah has done on pages 1 through 11. I think you'll see that she took a lot of time and summarized all the meetings that we had, the speakers, their recommendations. I think it's a good refresher because time flies, and we forget things that certain groups have said or they want or they like to see us look at. And Sarah did a really good job going through all that and making sure that's back on our minds, and then when other people look at this, they'll know what we're up to. What I want you to do is by December 6th, that's next Friday, if you have any changes or ideas that you'd like to do, Brian, anybody, let me know by then. And just contact me directly and so we can talk about it. I'm going to be at the Rural Development Council next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday with some of you guys, but we're easy to get a hold of. But let's just make sure we try to get this done before biennial, because I'd love to be signed off and moved by then if we could be. But do take your time and do that. Yes, sir. Oh, excuse me. Go ahead. Let's see, 19. Yeah. Yeah, we could. You want to try that? Okay, that'll be. Representative had an idea. We're going to. What we might do is, will it be 4, 5, 8? No, it'd be better. I think. Yeah, I like Brian, like Representative Prince is saying. If we just move up, maybe that'll work. Because we want to be able to hear you, and this is being recorded.
Well, and really the point of the microphones is not so that we can hear you. Yeah. Obviously, we can hear you with or without a microphone. It's so that people watching online can hear you.
Yeah, and it's recorded, so yeah.
Yeah, and recording for posterity. So that's really kind of the thrust of what we're trying to do.
So it's tough talking to yours. Does that work for you?
1, 2, 3.
Okay, I'll turn it up just a little bit.
Ooh, well, there's a will, there's a way, ain't it?
Yeah, thank you, Representative, for being a problem solver. Here, here. Ah, here you go. Oh. That was good. Well, our first speaker, as I turned it up for me too, is Miss Antoinette Tuft. I'm going to let you tell your story. You've got a great story with some nice young folks here to tell us yours too, and I think you got a very compelling story, and you brought us a book.
Yes, we did.
And so if I'll just turn it over to you now, and so young people, when you get a chance, speak directly into that microphone. I think I've got everybody on there. Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
My name is Antoinette Tuff. I am the young lady who saved the elementary school here in DeKalb County on August 20th, 2013, when a young man came into the elementary school with an AK-47 and about 500 rounds of ammo. I wouldn't have thought then, but I know now that it's the only school shooting in the nation that had no fatalities or injuries, because one thing that I did was I used my tough tactics, which is compassion, confidence, and control, and I showed that young man what that looked like in his life as we were both in suicide moments. It wasn't my first time trying to commit suicide, but it was my last. That day changed my life, it changed my destiny, but most of all, it allowed me to be able to walk into my children's lives, to be able to change their lives. And so what I did from that was started my own nonprofit called Kids on the Move for Success, so that I could go back to change students' lives. I realized that they were not the only ones that were trying to commit suicide, and they were in the same place that I was, just like that young man. And how do we offset it to that we don't have kids being bullied in school, bullied in their families, but they also know that they have a safe place that they can be able to go to, and we do that at Kids on the Move for Success. So the students that you're going to hear from today are my youth trailblazers. And so they go with me, we sit down and we have town hall meetings. We come back and talk about that safety in their schools and in their communities and kind of what does that look like and, how do they come back to be able to be supportive to their fellow classmates and be able to allow them to know that life is worth living for. These are who are on the front line every day in our schools. And as we're making laws and changes, what does that look like? And so today, I wanted you all to be able to not just hear from agencies, but actually hear from those that are on the front line every day. So these are my youth trailblazers and Kids on the Move for Success. And we'll start off with Jordan Parker.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jordan Parker, and I'm a youth trailblazer with Kids on the Move for Success, and I'm also a very proud Georgia native. I mean, Georgia is the heart of the civil rights movement, and let's not forget Southern rap, but there are some things about Georgia that I'm not so proud of. Things like being ranked the 4th highest state for gun violence, just a few deaths behind Texas, California, and Florida, or the 537 deaths and 8 mass shootings that have happened in 2018 alone. To call someplace home and then find out that 34 children from the ages of 0 to 11 and 73 adolescents from the ages of 12 to 17 have been killed or injured by gun violence in 2018 is embarrassing and frankly disturbing. After finding this information, I had to ask some of the grade school kids that I tutor, when do you feel safe? Of course, I got a variety of answers, but there are some that stood out to me the most. The one that stood out to me the most was from an 8-year-old boy. He said he only felt safe the moment he locked his bedroom door before he went to bed. Unfortunately, this reality is all too common amongst youth and adults across Georgia. It is no longer safe to do the simple things like go to school or the corner store or even walk down the street. It is imperative that the citizens that live in communities with the highest rates of gun violence, like East Point, Union City, College Park, Tifton, and Hateville, are no longer anesthetized with fear. I want our youth to fear not passing a test, not being killed in school or at a park. We as activists, change makers, legislators, representatives, and public servants must work together to make Georgia safe again. Now, don't get me wrong, that does not mean over-policed, low-income, overpopulated urban areas. That means we must be proactive, and you must create the legislation that will make Georgia safe again. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Simone Boyd. I'm 17 years old. I'm from Brookwood High School, which is in Gwinnett County. So my topic is about school safety. So as a student, we spend more hours at school than we do at home. And so school is basically like our second place where we get to like be with our friends and be like with our teachers. But at the same time, according to the data released by the Youth Truth Student Survey, only like 2/3 feel safe in their classroom, but 59% feel safe in school overall. And 55% feel safe on school property, while 54% feel safe in hallways, bathrooms, and locker rooms. As we like watch the news more and more, and day by day, we can see that more mass shootings are occurring, especially through like elementary schools, high schools, colleges, middle schools. And my experience with this was that when my sister was in middle school, like 2 students actually brought guns to the school, and like luckily nothing happened. The school went on lockdown, but like after that day, like I just like felt more and more fear, like that something would happen to like one of my siblings or like my mom, because my mom is a high school teacher, and her school, they deal with a lot of like gun violence there as well. So my biggest fear is like something might happen to my mom who's at a different school, or my sister, but luckily she's with me in my high school, but like also my brother. So more as a nation, I feel like, and also as Georgia together, I feel like we should be coming together regardless of political party, regardless of how we may feel about a certain topic, and we should come together to like solve this issue instead of using it as like for political gains. And one way I would say this would be like maybe raise the requirement to get a gun, maybe improve our background checks, and like also for domestic violence abusers, like they should not have a gun. But overall, it's not gonna solve the problem, but at least gonna put a band-aid. I'm sorry. So it's not gonna like solve the problem. It's more gonna it's gonna address the issue and attack it from the issue, so we can so make it a better place. And also for school safety, we need to be focusing more on the harassment issues and sexual abuse that's happening in schools. That somebody's clothes should not determine their consent. It should not determine how they feel, or if they were asking for it. Regardless of the fact, they're still a human being, and they should be treated as such, and they should be getting justice and dignity according to the Constitution. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Joshua Hagler. I'm a senior at Martin Luther King Junior High School in Lithonia. I'm part of the Youth Trailblazers of Kids on the Move for Success, and I want to thank this committee for giving myself and our group a chance to speak. Each day in our nation, there's an average of 3,041 attempts by young people in grades 9 through 12 to end their life. If we include 7th and 8th grade, the number will almost double. Youth suicide and self-inflicted injuries is a serious social and public concern. While suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States overall, it's the 2nd leading cause of death among young people between ages 15 and 24. More teenagers and young adults die from suicide than from cancer, heart disease, AIDS, birth defects, strokes, pneumonia, influenza, and chronic lung disease combined. In the United States, 44,965 people die each year from suicide, and this costs the U.S. about $69 billion per year. Some groups are at higher risk from suicide than others. Males are more likely than females to commit suicide, but females are more likely to report it. Among racial and ethnic groups, American Indian and Alaska Natives have the highest suicide rates, followed by white males, Hispanics, and then African Americans. Research also shows that lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth are likely to engage in suicidal behavior than their heterosexual peers. Earlier this year, I was a witness to attempted suicide at my school. I was in the media center with my friend when he came back and said a boy was trying to commit suicide in the bathroom. At first, he thought it was a joke because he didn't know that it was possible the way the standards was trying to hang himself. But when I walked in, I called his name. He was unresponsive. He was on the stall with a shirt around his neck, and he was kind of elevated a little bit off the floor. When I called his name, he didn't respond, so I quickly took the shirt off his neck and got him down. Then I went to go get the police officers. When they came, they checked his pulse, and then the boy then started to try to speak. That's when later first responders came. One life was saved that day, but we have to do more to prevent suicides because I don't want another teen to experience what I saw or witness what I saw. More school funding and policies should focus on providing mental health to students and creating more anti-bullying environments. Depression is the most common condition, it's the most common condition associated with suicide, and it is often undiagnosed and untreated. Conditions like depression, anxiety, substance problems, and especially when unaddressed, increase risk for suicide. Bullying is a cause of students wanting to end their life. No longer is bullying confined to schools where children could previously escape the pressures of bullies and retreat to a safe place called home. The internet has provided new ways for students to bully others nonstop. Bullying has become an epidemic that affects not only children, but parents, teachers, and the community. I hope that together we can come up with solid public policies that will begin to curtail this problem. This is why wraparound services in our public school is key. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Zion Cochran, and I am a senior at Martin Luther King Junior High School in Lithonia, GA. I am here representing Kids on the Move for Success. In the past 2 years, 3 students at MLK have committed suicide, while several others have attempted. In my friend group alone, almost everyone I know suffers with mental health problems. Yes. There's so much that goes on in the mind of a teen that no one knows about, that no one talks about, and mental health is such a bigger issue than people let on. We learn about so much in school, but yet we never learn about mental health. Suicide is the 2nd leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24. and I have some of the same statistics as my friend Josh. More young adults die from suicide than from cancer, heart disease, AIDS, birth defects, stroke, pneumonia, influenza, and chronic lung disease combined. Every day, an average of over 3,041 young people in grades 9 through 12 attempt suicide. In 2017, 44,965 students committed suicide in the United States. 4 out of 5 teens who committed suicide have given clear warning signs that went ignored. Also, in the case that my friend was talking about with that boy who was in the bathroom trying to commit suicide, after the fact, it came out that he had gone to the counselors numerous times. And it was almost as if he was turned away, or they could never give him any viable help. The school system only goes as far as what they have to do, which is give you a pamphlet and a generic pat on the back, and then you're sent back to deal with it yourself. As a teen, I personally feel the pressures of school, social life, and bullying are the major reasons young people commit suicide. It has been my experience that schools do not have adequate counselors or training to deal with the emotions and pressure students face. Students need more than just someone to go to when they need their schedule changed or when one of the teachers is acting up. We need someone who we can actually talk to. Counselors are no longer people you can go to and sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with. Counselors do your schedules, they talk to you about class, and that's about it. Modern schools are busy teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, while soft skills like communication, conflict resolution, civics, and global awareness are ignored. Oftentimes, our educators and legislators are concerned not with human issues, but economics and self-interest. Often teen issues go unaddressed because most adults write off warning signs as normal reactions to being a young adult. And that's another thing. When you do go to these people and you present your problems to them, which is one, extremely stressful for you, for them to turn around and say, oh, that's normal, or you'll get over it, that's not how it feels in the moment. Telling me that, oh, wow, you're just feeling like that, it'll go away or it will pass, it hasn't passed. I've known people since middle school going through these things, and they still go through them, and every day is as if they go through the motions of just, it'll get better one day, but when is one day? Often mental health is not addressed in schools. People, whether young or old, who battle depression and social anxiety are left feeling alone and isolated, which leads to suicide. And then in African American families in particular, mental health is ignored as the stress of being Black. And most Black students don't have the financial resources to get counseling like their white counterparts. In African American households, I think that it's a stigma behind depression because we go through so much as people that our parents say, out of all the things you have to worry about, mental health is like the last on the totem pole. And so that leaves a lot of African American teens and youth feeling left out. I have Caucasian friends who they can tell their parents that they're going through something, and their parents will immediately go out and get them a counselor or the help that they need, but let my Black friend ask their parent for help or tell their parent about their feelings, and it's almost like they get attacked or belittled for feeling that way because you don't even know the stresses of life. But yeah, that's my spiel.
So first of all, I want to thank each and every one of you all for being able to hear each and every one of my students' stories here today. And as you can see, it doesn't just start with us sitting in this room. We have to go back into our communities to allow our kids to know at the end of the day that their voices matter and that we care. That young man who held me up with a gun on August the 20th that was 20 years old had a mental issue. He was not able to get his medicine. And me showing him soft skills, compassion, confidence, and control in the midst of his crisis allowed him to be able to surrender his gun to me and have no fatalities or injuries. So I would say to each and every one of you all today, what are we going to do outside of sitting in our offices, outside of writing our pens and changing laws to be able to affect our kids that are on the front line? I know us here at Kids on the Move for Success, we're actually having a mentoring program to go back and support our kids. I started that in elementary because I realized by the time our babies get to this age, they're already struggling. They're already struggling in elementary school, so how do we come back to support them? On your desk, you have some of the actual literature of what we're doing in Kids on the Move for Success. I'll ask you not to let this be the last time that you come back and listen, but listen on a daily basis. I invite you all out to come out to read to us. I gave you a pamphlet. I would love to have a representative day for you all to come out into the schools with us and read to our babies who can't read. We just don't have bullying issues and issues with suicide. Our babies are not reading, and they're going to be our future and our next generation. So how do we change that in elementary? And I ask you all to come out and support us, sit in some of our town hall meetings, and just hear the stories and come back with different solutions that we can be able to do that to support our kids. Thank you all so very much. We thank you at Kids on the Move for Success.
Let's give them a hand. Thank y'all. Ms. Tuff, I just got a couple questions. How, in mentoring, how big is your group? I mean, how many folks are you mentoring? A little bit of, I'm just curious.
So I started my mentoring program last year, and we affected about 3,000 kids. I was in one school district in DeKalb County and one school at Canby Lane. We are now in 3 school districts, and we're in 6 schools, and I have over 50 kids just in my mentoring program and my literacy program, which is Knowledge for Powerful in Literacy. And then these are my Trailblazers, and I have about 10 kids in my Youth Trailblazers.
And so the youth trail, y'all are mentors to other young
Yes.
people, right?
They do. They come with me. We sit in town hall. They sit in town hall meetings with me, and then we come back to make changes. So Jordan has actually been there with me. We've come back. So when you come to my town hall meetings, I have student panels that sit first, and we kind of come back and have them to say what's going on in their schools. Then we have an adult panel, and then we all come together and have diversity within the tables, so that you can be able to say, this is a legislator right here, this is a educator right here, this is a student, this is maybe a pastor, and we're all sitting at the table. What can we do in our communities and in our schools? So yes, we're all over Atlanta.
My goodness. It's so for you, I think it's for young people. I mean, you can answer individually or as a group maybe. You get a great benefit out of doing that, I imagine, don't you? To being a mentor.
Yes. One of my passions is actually working with elementary school kids, and not even just like doing homework and stuff like that, but actually helping them go through things, because like Ms. Tuff said, they are going through things earlier now than like I was going through when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. So being able to help them with schoolwork and with the challenges that they face in life is like a really fulfilling thing for me.
How do you gain access to the elementary school? Are they really good about letting you go there? How's that?
I do things through Kids on the Move for Success, but also outside programs too. So.
Okay.
So what I do is I have them to come up. We do like educational field trips and all that. So Jordan and all, and they come into my programs with me. So what you'll be able to see when you see my kids in their T-shirts, some of my babies that are in my Youth Trailblazers and those that are in my peer-to-peer, they have been with me since they were in kindergarten. And their moms heard that I was back here with my mentoring program, so they all seek me out. And so they'll drive an hour or two to come to me. And so when you see us, you'll see babies that are in pre-K all the way up to those that are in high school. And we just go to different STEM workshops. We go and take them outside of their communities because they're foster and homeless kids, and then they all live in at-risk communities. That's who I serve. And so when we come back, they're actually seeing outside of that. Half of them haven't even been downtown.
Okay. You want to say something? Yes, ma'am.
Like, how I feel about mentoring. I think I enjoy it so much because it lets you see the human experience, which I think we're missing in like the school system or just in the world in general. The human connection part of the world, that we all go through similar things and that you can help each other with your own experience, which is what I feel like is the biggest aspect missing of school. Like, we learn to read, we learn to write, we learn about history, but the thing that makes life meaningful, we don't learn about.
Thank you for taking time to be involved in that young man's life. It's pretty neat. Good for you. I really appreciate that. And so bullying, and then some other committee members have questions too. How prevalent is it? I think, for who was talked most about bullying? I think you did. But we talk about it a lot, and I think school systems are trying to do a lot about bullying, and I guess we all know bullying is the key that really causes violent problems in schools. But is it, I mean, actually, you see a lot of it. I mean, online, is it mostly online, in person? What?
So,
Just
for my school, I don't really see actual like physical bullying, but like there's different forms of bullying, as you guys might know, like mental, like cyberbullying. So like it's more of like for me, it's like exclusionary type of thing. Like, oh, you're different from us, so you can't sit with us. Like, oh, this person is weird. Did you see what this person was wearing today? And it's that type of mindset. It's just more of like a us versus them, and we need to like make sure we can like make everybody feel included and make sure they have like a voice, and like just open up conversation and like try and get people to know each other beyond just like stereotypes or like what somebody may look like or how they might talk or dress, because at the end of the day we're all still like human beings.
Chairman Ballinger right here has a few questions or comments. You'll find she's very knowledgeable about the subject.
Thank you, and there we go. All
Awesome.
right. Number one, I sincerely appreciate everybody that came today. You touched on a lot of topics that I've spent quite a bit of time working on, particularly bullying and also child suicide. I don't know if y'all are aware. I would like to make y'all aware of some state resources that are available, in that topic. I don't know, sometimes dissemination of information is difficult for us, particularly whenever we're trying to get that message to 11 million Georgians. So, reach all the way. But I serve on our state child fatality review, and Trebor ran child fatality review coordinator, and we've been doing and engaging in various town halls throughout the state. We've done one in Savannah, we did one in Barrow County, we did one in my home county of Cherokee County, and we would be more than happy to do one at your school. If you would like, please feel free and reach out. But in that, we're able to present some of the state resources that are available for suicide prevention. There's the See Something, Text Something, or See Something, Send Something app that is available. I don't know if you've been made aware of that, but that app is available, and it's actually monitored. So that is available. DBHDD also has a crisis app and hotline, 24 hours. It's staffed by mental health professionals that's available. We as a state spend over $20 million in mental health crisis, trying to prevent things like that. So we're certainly putting our money where our mouth is, trying to make that situation better. We also have initiated certain mental health initiatives within the state to try to make that better. And, also, like I said, the state child fatality review is focusing on suicide prevention. In addition to the app, some of your colleagues, they're actually, it was a young lady, she had some mental health issues, and her brother, who was quite the programmer, actually came up with an app of Are You Okay? Feel free, shoot me an email and I'll send you the link to download that app. But it basically is kind of if you're feeling in the dumps, if you're not feeling okay, you can basically access your friends on this app, and it's you've pre-ordered 5 contacts that will reach out via the app, and they'll say, hey, somebody so-and-so's having problems, so-and-so is not okay. So it will allow your friends to reach out to you and for you to realize that network of people. But I thought that was an interesting thing, and it actually came from young folks like yourself. So I did want to put that out. And I do want to say that we have struggled with particularly cyberbullying and judicial non-civil. I serve on the judicial non-civil committee here for the Georgia House, which deals with criminal acts. And unfortunately, we are constrained quite a bit by what we can and can't outlaw in the state of Georgia by the First Amendment. We have the right of free speech. Sometimes that's a delicate issue. But, if y'all think of anything we could do to empower young people to kind of police themselves, and kind of say, hey, back off, dude. That's not cool. That's not right. You shouldn't say those sorts of things. I think it's wonderful what you're doing, but if there's anything we can do as a state to kind of bring in some of those state resources to strengthen that message, we would certainly love to do that. So I just wanted to make y'all aware of kind of some of the initiatives that we're doing. We're trying to partner with y'all. We're trying to, we are doing a lot as a state. I feel good about where we're going. But certainly y'all reach out. I get frustrated sometimes that people, because they're always talking about everything that's bad, and we're doing so much that's good. So, if we can kind of unite those resources together and kind of come together, that's certainly something we could do. But, if y'all would be interested in one of those town halls about suicide prevention, just let me know. So anyway, or anything else.
Well, I'm letting you know now we're interested. So
Okay.
we're not going. We're
Yeah.
going to take that invitation. I would love
Yeah.
for you. After this, I'll have my team to send you over, an email
Okay.
for you all to come over and sit down to be able to bring those resources to us for us
Sure.
to be able to know. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier. My team was that a lot of times in our homes, it's a scary place.
Mm-hmm.
So if you bring something and we know that it's a comfortable place and,
Mhm.
and it's not I got to kind of run from it.
Mhm.
And so I would be great to be able to come back and just sit down and have that town hall meeting to bring my babies up and be
Yeah.
able to show that and share that
Because I do know
information.
that there are a lot of mental health resources with our community service boards. There's actually, the federal government is actually funding a suicide prevention specialist for our community service board. So those folks are available to either run classes, to teach peer-to-peer mentoring, which is one of the things that we've been focusing on. There are a lot of things that are available. So I would certainly, we're trying to kind of, peel back those bureaucratic layers sometimes that come between, government and where those services need to go. So certainly anything we can do with regards to that would be awesome.
Look for that phone call.
Excellent.
Got a question. How are you funded? I mean, how do you get enough dollars to get all around and do all this? I'm just curious.
Well, it's just like people that are sitting in the seats where you all are. There's never enough dollars. We are always looking for funding, whether it's grants, whether it's individuals, whether it's corporations. We just did a big Giving Tuesday with my committee and my team and all of that. So you can never get enough.
Oh, yeah.
And we're always looking for other opportunities. So if you know of a way that we can get some funding, make sure we get that too.
Oh, no. Well, I was just curious. I mean, yeah, because you've got a lot of traveling, a lot of moving around.
But it's mostly those who have come up. When I was on Anderson Cooper on CNN, people all over the world donated to me.
Okay.
And so what I do with those dollars is I give them back out to the community. August the 25th and August the 27th in the state of Georgia is Antoinette Tufts Day. So I go back on my day and just bless babies all over the world. Whether it's scholarship opportunities, whether you're seeing them here like now in my Youth Trailblazers or in my mentoring program or my literacy program, I take every dollar that we get back from individuals and corporations and all that and give back to my youth. It's all about my babies being able to succeed.
All right. Anyone else? Tommy? Brian?
Mhm.
Oh, there you go. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Go ahead.
No, I just put it up.
Representative Prince.
Again, listen, thank you guys for coming and definitely sharing with us your experiences and what you guys are going through now. But I do want to make sure that you know that we do more than just sit behind desks and sign papers and things. You got Mr. Chairman Bennett down there has been teaching school for I don't know how many years. Chairman Lunsford, retired police officer, law enforcement. A couple of us do other things. Of course, Chairman Ballinger, of course, what she does and things like that. So we don't just sit behind desks and sign things, okay? We try to look for resources. In this position, yes, we make decisions to hopefully try to help things. With that being said, I want to commend all of you trailblazers for stepping up and leading in your schools because I think that's what we need. Chairman Ballinger mentioned a couple of things about some of the things that the state is already doing. Having you get access to it is the key. But again, it's hard for us, and I say us, not just talking about us up here, but us as parents, as leaders, as members of the community, to reach you guys. And I say you guys, especially young folks. I have 4 myself, so I know. So, I mean, it's a great step that you guys are leading, and I encourage you to continue to spread your concept, not so much your the concept that you have with other school systems, that they can start getting trailblazers in their school, because that's who students go to first. They go to each other, and they're the ones who recognize it before parents, before teachers. It's the peers. And again, there are programs out there. Can we do more? Yes. But again, we all know that's resources. But can we do more? Yes. But again, thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing. And again, as I said, try to share that. Please share your concept with other school systems that maybe they can incorporate this as well. If it's working this well in Atlanta, I'm sure it's going to work well in Augusta. So thank you.
Well, let me say this to you. I know you all are not just sitting behind the desk and just writing papers. I said that because that's what people think. And I know you all are sitting in my town hall meetings with me. So I made that comment so people to know that's not just what you're doing. I know that a lot of times we think that you're sitting here, and that's why I made that comment, because I want them to know that you're not just sitting, that they're in my town hall meetings with us, speaking on topics of what we need to do. And I appreciate you all, for each and every one of you all, for listening to us today. Thank you. And enjoy your autographed copy of my book, too. Thank you.
Well, thank y'all. Thank y'all. We look forward to hearing lots of great things that y'all have done or
Thank
going to do. Y'all are very lucky to know her, aren't you? Yes. Hey, well, thank y'all very much for
Thank
presenting
you.
to us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Oh, he said you did not. Brian said he didn't get his autograph.
I'm gonna personally autograph for yours. I'm gonna put your name in it.
And we'll just take just a minute break while we reorganize our table here. I know. Good job. You did beautiful. Look what I wrote. That's sweet. Okay. I just saw it. I just didn't get to look at it. Sorry for our break, but that was very well enjoyed by all of us. Thank you. Now, our next speaker, I'm pretty just personal guy. When Chairman Benton down at the end called me yesterday saying he had talked to a friend who had a company that he wanted to have come talk today, I certainly can't tell my friend Tommy Benton no. And I say that because he saved me in March of this year. And I appreciate him that I didn't forget. And when we were talking, I said, "Oh man, whatever you want, man, just let me know." But who we have is ACG Solutions and Critical Response Group. Mike Rogers is going to speak. Nan Sisk is the facilitator, right? Y'all refereed basketball, you and Chairman Benton together. How fun. Well, good for you. But so we'd love to hear it. Love to hear what you have to say. And you're not as cute as those young people that were here just a minute ago. I'm sorry. But, let me turn your microphone. There you go.
Check. Chairman Jaspers, the rest of the committee, thank you very much. I truly appreciate the opportunity. I know you're very busy, so yes, sir. Yep, I always walk and talk, but I'll be stationary today, I promise. I'm okay, sir. I will adapt. Thank you. Everybody, I truly appreciate your time. I promise to be efficient with it. I know you're very busy. I'm going to talk primarily off the slides because we're going to talk about a lot of pictures and technology, but a technique coming out of the military. Like it says, my name is Mike Rogers, representing one of 3 businesses that have embarked on an endeavor to increase school safety throughout the country. A little bit about my background, and I'll talk about those businesses, but I come from a long family of law enforcement. It's actually 5 generations. I'm the first one not to do that in about 120 years. Literally everybody, I'm the first one to deviate. But after 9/11, went in the military, specifically went to West Point, graduated 2008, kind of stepped into the surge in Afghanistan. I have a number of combat deployments in the special operations community. I was actually assigned down Savannah, Georgia for a number of years, so Savannah's a second home for my wife and I. But when I came out of that community, I took an assignment at a Princeton University, and I was really kind of interested in how I take what I learned overseas and how we could apply it home domestically. And that was about 4 years ago, and now we've been doing a lot of mapping and taking technology and techniques out of the military and transition them into increasing school safety. But before we get into that, there's 3 businesses I want to talk about. BAE Systems, who I'm here to represent, it's a large defense contracting firm, the 6th largest defense contracting firm. We do everything from missiles to tanks to nuclear aircraft carriers. In this instance, it's a piece of mapping technology. They partnered in 2016 with a company called CRG, or the Critical Response Group. They're the domestic partners of BAE. They basically use our software to make maps domestically. The partner in Georgia is ACG. So ACG saw what we were doing throughout the country, and they immediately brought us down here. And that's why I have an opportunity to present in front of you today. So them understanding the value of what we were doing and looking at from an integration perspective how we can take the technology and bring it home here. Specifically, the relationship between ACG and the Critical Response Group started back in July of this year, which is only a couple months ago, but very proud to say in that short amount of time, we have public and private schools that we're already working on throughout the state of Georgia. It's a very simple technique that I'll show you. It was about 25 schools that we're in the process of working through in Georgia right now, but there's over 700 schools that are already complete throughout the United States with the technique I'll present, a couple other 100 that are in the process right now. But the whole technique was initially developed in support of special operations conducting operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2005, 2006, special operations realized the difficult time of scaling an organization. So our problem was, how do I take a bunch of Navy SEALs and Army Rangers that have never worked together before, make them work under this joint umbrella, and put them out on an operation. And every night we'd go out and conduct an operation, and the problem was that, again, I've never worked. Speak up, they're having trouble hearing you. Can everybody hear me? I don't know if I broke that. Oh, well, you should have came for the real show. But what the problem was is that when you took Army Rangers and Navy SEALs that had never been here before, and you put them to a location that they've never been to before, it was just a major problem for us to talk about working together at that specific location. So what Special Operations did is it took, instead of looking at this game or at this random village from a piece of aerial imagery, they took that piece of imagery and turned it into a game of Battleship. So letters across the top, numbers on the left-hand side, they will label all the buildings and label all the intersections. And just like a game of Battleship, if I told you to use the gridded system and look onto that, I could talk very specifically about a place in that village that I know you've never been to before, and we'd all be speaking the same exact language because very simply we're looking at the same exact piece of paper. And it was the first introduction of a common operating picture within a special operations community. Well, every single special operation raid for the last 15 years of the war has been planned and operated and conducted off of using that exact technique, that game of Battleship, that gridded reference graphic, to include the Bin Laden raid. So if you can see in front of Secretary Clinton, she's looking at the gridded reference graphic of that event, the same exact piece of game or game of Battleship that's on the form of that operator. And the simple aspect was is that we wanted everyone to look at the same piece of paper so they could speak the same language. And it was every single raid for the last 15 years of war has been planned and executed. Every tier 1 high value target has been executed using this technique. So coming out of that community, my wife's a school teacher. I have 2 little girls in a public school system. I've become very interested in the state of school safety. And I'm able to take what I learned from the military. I'm able to take what was the family background of law enforcement and kind of try to solve the problem that we saw domestically. And the first thing is that we realized is that every single school has a piece of, has an emergency action binder that looks like that 3-ring binder. Every school in the country has one by law. The problem is that there's some very important information in that binder that is traditionally not accessible and is not understandable in a time of a critical incident. No one's actually going to pull the binder out and read what's in that binder. And there's some really important things in there, namely the blueprints, the building schematics, potentially a piece of imagery associated with that location. They're all in there, but they're just not accessible. So what we do is we take a piece of imagery associated with a location. I don't know if you can see, but on top of this piece of imagery, there's a gold star, just as a point of reference. That gold star is on top of the library at this school. The blueprint that was on file with this school is right here. It's a traditional architectural drawing. And this is a pretty decent blueprint compared to what we see traditionally, but all blueprints, as we've learned now, are done in what is called an arbitrary north. It's not correlated to the ground. So the yellow star here is actually the yellow star right there. They're already 180 degrees off. This is not a game. This is a legitimate example of one of the schools that we've planned throughout the country. Additionally, as we started working through this problem set, we've realized that most of the blueprints are just not up to date anymore. None of the building schematics have been kept up to date. So, a guidance counselor comes in and they move offices, and the principal wants to change the cafeteria in the library, and over time the buildings just aren't actually up to date structurally anymore. So none of the blueprints are up to date. Additionally, none of them are labeled. So right now, if you called in and said, I'm in room 105 of the art room, that information is not accessible to the dispatcher, the police officer, from the municipal, county, and state jurisdictions that are responding to that location. They simply don't have access to understand the layout of that school. So what we do is we take the imagery, we take the blueprint, you see a little video, we cut the blueprint out, we correlate it to the earth, we make sure it's up to date, and then we label it and put the game of Battleship on top. So we're able to take the lessons that we learned overseas and make them applicable domestically, where we actually take the blueprints, label it, and make sure everyone's now operating on the same exact piece of paper. When we take that imagery, we take the building schematic, we label it, it comes back looking at something like this. So kind of a flavor of what we use in the military, but again, being used domestically. And we call this a CRG, or a collaborative response graphic. Now off of this, I actually went to this school last week and conducted a presentation with the municipal department and for the school board, and I walked in this door, or the front door of the school, and because I was familiar with it and I had access to the map, when I walked in, I asked the chief of police who I was with, I said, sir, where are we conducting the presentation tonight? He said, well, we're going to the library. He's like, it's this way. And he was actually started walking in the wrong direction because he didn't have access to the information to know where the library was. I know it seems like a very simple thing, but we see time and time again is that in a time of a critical incident, if we're not all communicating and operating efficiently, we're not as successful as we need to be. And one of the most important pieces of information is what is the layout of that school and how is that school labeled. So we conduct maps, we make maps, we make 2 types of maps. We make macro maps, which is just a high altitude kind of command and control map, and then we make micro maps, which are internal. On the micro map, on the macro map, if you can see here, there's 2 different shades of green, kind of splitting this picture in half, dark green on the top, light green on the bottom. It's because BAE Systems developed a very specific piece of mapping technology that enables us to pull imagery off of any platform, so basically any satellite, any drone, any airplane, and stitch it together like a jigsaw puzzle, and we do that enables us to maintain the geospatial information on that picture. So basically, in this picture, every pixel is very accurate. Every pixel has a latitude and longitude associated with it. It's a very smart graphic. So now when I take the blueprint and we cut it out and we label it and we make sure it's up to date and we overlay that blueprint on top of that piece of imagery, that blueprint also becomes geospatially accurate. So the doors now have a latitude and longitude associated with it. The fire access control panel has a latitude and longitude associated with it. And it's actually the doors as the way the doors are marked there. And I show this example. This is a school up north. But one of the doors on the eastern side of the building, I know you can't see it, but it's door 12, door 29, then door 13. The doors are out of order. This school is not unlike most of the schools that we touch, where there's something that just does not make sense from the labeling convention. They built 28 doors, then they needed an extra door for the gym, so they put it on and they didn't change the labels. Every school has some type of nuance like that until we take the time to go collect the actual site-specific labels, no one has access to that information. Traditionally, what we see is an architectural drawing that looks like this, and that's a very good. The school's less than 10 years old, but the problem is none of it's labeled. So we take that graphic comes back looking like this, something that's usable in the time of a critical incident. Same exact school district. The school's about 2 miles away from the one I showed previously, but they didn't have a building schematic. A lot of times we're going into these schools or pieces of critical infrastructure and they just don't have anything. They lost the blueprints or building schematics years ago. So they had something on file that they just kind of drew themselves and they labeled it. Now the labels weren't accurate. They were close, but they weren't accurate. And ultimately the building wasn't accurate either. So that's what they had. That's what was on file at the police department. That's what went back. Schools are also built on time, schools get bigger over time as the population grows. So this started as one school, and then one school turned into 2 schools. When we started that project, you had a high school that was on one set of building schematics, and then you had the intermediate school that was on a second set of schematics. But imagine yourself as a first responder getting there, and say you even have access to this information, which most of them, the responding officers, wouldn't have access to this. But let's say best case scenario, you have this. Now you're looking at 2 different blueprints that are not correlated. North isn't standardized on it. It's a very difficult problem set. The business and the partnership that we've created, we pride ourselves, and we've taken individuals out of the special operations community who have used this technique on thousands upon thousands of repetitions, and also individuals from the law enforcement communities. We've taken individuals from the state, county, municipal governments, in law enforcement, first responders throughout the country to make sure that as we build this team out, we're building a team that makes sure it's implementing the solution and actually solving the problem. So it's taken what we knew in the special operations world, vetting it through law enforcement, and ultimately providing something that actually works. Last example I'll show, one of the last examples I'll show, this was a school we just finished last week, and what was on file with the state was the building schematics that you see on the left-hand side. And on the top of that, I show this because it talks about how that school was verified July 23rd of 2018, showing that they know the importance of having to have up-to-date building schematics and going out and verifying it. But as soon as we looked at it, we realized that it wasn't correct. Every time we go out, without exception, we're finding issues with what's on file with the state, municipal, and county levels. So an ancillary benefit of this is going actually out there and scrubbing, God bless you, going out there and scrubbing and getting the information required to get to get everything. More often than not, every day, I'm in 2 schools a day. I'm very fortunate as we're rolling this out. And I'll sit with the superintendent and the facilities director, and they'll say, oh, we have the best blueprints and the best building schematics. We take an extreme amount of pride. We'll have it to you today. Outstanding, that's great. 2 weeks, 3 weeks goes by, and they're still trying to find stuff. And they'll send us information, and they'll be missing 2/3 of the building, because what they thought they had on file and what they had actually wasn't correct. So the ancillary benefit of this is just asking the questions to standardize all the information. And now think of the power of when you go from county 1 to county 2, the schools are playing exactly the same way, and everyone has access to it. But the maps are great. But the maps are only part of it. Before I get into the dissemination, the last example I'll show, this is of Pulse Nightclub. The reason I show Pulse Nightclub, we did this after the fact, but unfortunately when you read every single after-action review, from Columbine and Parkland through the Navy Yard shooting, through Pulse Nightclub, through Sandy Hook, every one of them calls out the difficult time that first responders have when responding to a critical incident at a location that they're unfamiliar with. At Pulse Nightclub, the individuals that responded from that local jurisdiction are getting information that the bad guy was in the bathroom, in the female bathroom specifically. But if you've never been there before, what door do you go into to get to the female bathroom? It's very basic information that is not available today. All the Sandy Hook AAR specifically calls out to digitize the blueprints and make them accessible. The problem is that none of the blueprints are accurate, and more importantly, none of them are labeled. So we're just taking information and putting it somewhere that I can't even use. So we pride ourselves on fixing that. So everything on the left-hand portion of this slide is just kind of how we create the map, but most importantly is how we disseminate the map. So there's really four main things I want to talk about. First is we have the ability to directly integrate the maps into the dispatch programs that the police cars and fire and first responders are using today. So the way that they would get to a blueprint today, we basically replace the old building schematic and put an up-to-date collaborative response graphic in its place. Second is BAE Systems has developed these cloud-based servers that we're deploying throughout the country that enable us, which I will show in a second, that enable every officer in a certain area of responsibility who's authenticated to get access to all of the maps in that area of responsibility. So the example would be in Ocean County, New Jersey is one of the examples where we're rolling out right now, or in Wisconsin or Indiana where we just put one in 2 days ago, is that every police officer in that area of responsibility has a mobile application on their phone that's authenticated to them, and they're able to get in and see all the schools in that area of responsibility instantaneously. And you can see yourself, you can see any other officer that's operating on that. It's very secure, which again I'll show. Next is hard copies. Literally the way we conducted our operations in the military were hard copies of these maps. But if everyone's looking at the same exact piece of paper, everyone's talking off the same sheet of music, and that's what we want to accomplish. And lastly, which my partner from ACG, Brandon, will talk about in a second, is SOAR. It's basically the art of the possible. When we start leaning forward and how do we take all these great maps that we have, how do we combine everything together so the camera system is feeding off the same exact map that the police officer is talking off of. And it just kind of creates this common operating picture, which we will show that. So very quickly, I'm just going to plug my phone in to take over the projector. And I like doing it this way because this is my personal phone. And you're just going to see me plug in a little converter cable, if I can make it fit. So it'll take a second, and I'll put my phone onto the screen. Now, I've never been here in this room before, but in 2 seconds, I just took over the projector through a $30 converter cable on my personal phone. I then touched the mobile application that's in place. What it's going to do is very quickly, it's going to show my location where I'm on the map. It plots me. It's going to take 20 seconds and find exactly where I am. Mr. Chairman, if you were on here right now and you turn your mobile application on, you would see me and I would see your location. If you walked across the street, I would see you and you would see me real time. Every 5 seconds, it's updating our location. But as I back out, I just put I apologize, but I put maps on from the Northeast today. Every one of those dots is the location of a map, is the location of a school or a piece of critical infrastructure. Every one of those individuals is a real-time person who's operating on this right now. But as I start to zoom in, see that box? I touch it, and I'm able to pull that map in real time. Before I talked about the doors being out of order, door 12, door 29, door 13. Right now I have access to that information instantaneously. And Mr. Chairman, again, if you were there and I was there, we would real time see each other's position on top of this. In this specific county, in the map I'm showing you, there's over 710 police officers in this county that have access to this. All the schools in that county are uploaded onto it, and it just serves as the countywide mutual aid platform. When the states become involved, it becomes a statewide rollout, and they just traditionally do all the schools in the state. It's powerful when all the schools in an entire school district are standardized and the same, because one school was built in the 20s, one in the 50s, one in the 70s, one in the 90s. So you can imagine the level of blueprints and schematics over 100 years, what they look like. So when we standardize that, that's powerful. When you go and do all the schools in an area of responsibility, that becomes even more powerful because every police officer understands how to communicate and is speaking the same language as a teacher or a student who's making a 911 call. And finally, when we get to the level in the state, and the state has access to a standardized way of doing things, it becomes powerful because any police officer throughout Georgia understands that there's going to be a schematic that looks like that they can communicate with a mutual aid partner off and simplify the way that we communicate. When we look at lessons coming back at war, where we're so passionate about what we're doing, we look at prior to Vietnam, there was no such thing as a trauma center in the United States of America. It didn't exist. You had a better chance of surviving a gunshot wound in Vietnam than you did a car accident in the United States. But by 1976, the country understood that was a problem, studied Vietnam, and passed legislation to make sure that every city had a level 1 trauma center, directly correlated to lessons learned on the battlefield. What we figured out in the war on terrorism and special operations was how do we take individuals that have never worked together before, put them into a location that they're not familiar with, and enable them to be successful in the most critical incident of their entire lives. That's the exact problem set that we're facing here, and that we think we have a fix for. With this, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon from ACG. And he's just going to demonstrate really the art of the possible, what it looks like when we integrate all these other systems together. When the camera systems come in play, when the door locks get integrated, this map doesn't only use for first responders, but it's used for, you know, the maintenance of the structure as well.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you guys. I really appreciate the opportunity today. So my name is Brandon Thompson. I'm one of the architects with ACG Solutions. I'm representing us today. And as well, I'm going to be showing some quick demos off the slide. But what I want to show you guys is the super intelligent map that CRG has been able to create to standardize that map and get that common operating picture within itself as a standalone product is a common sense factor when it comes to how we can make first responders get on and in a scene quickly. What ACG has done is been able to take that map and integrate it with our product line and create an integrated system called SOAR that I'll show you a real quick demo on. It just allows to add that intelligence and the integration of things that you may already have, like cameras, access control, and things like that. In this particular quick demo, I'm going to show you active shooter, as you've heard today on several occasions, is one of the biggest problems we're facing. So in this particular setup, this would be something what we would call a SOAR command. During the SOAR command, this would be something running in the background of a security office there on site. It could be in the principal's office. It can be anywhere we choose. That's a whole process of setting it up. But something goes down and a guy comes in and decides he wants to do an active shooter event. As you hear, there's a noise that comes back. It draws your attention. You can see the immediate interaction here. On that map, it's a little hard to see. See, we can get the laser pointer. But right here, there's some red squares that have popped up that are representing an actual camera feed there. That camera feed is showing you that there's been a trigger because of a gunshot. There's also a secondary box there that's representing a gunshot detector that's been integrated. With that interaction, we now know where the shot has taken place on that map. You can also see we have a camera feed that's been dedicated to that door or that location with inside the cafeteria. So now we get not only the first responders alerted, but we also have the ability to communicate where within that graph using the battleship concept and how to get my first responder there, but I also have eyes inside during the event. I can also control lockdown during the event. In this particular case, we'll say the gentleman runs out after shooting in the cafeteria and cuts up to these stairs. Once again, I know it's hard to see, but in this particular case, he runs upstairs, he fires another round. I get another alert. You now see a secondary camera has populated, and I've now moved to a second floor map where I know he's at, and I've got the triggers again. This is just, once again, the art of the impossible becoming the art of the possible. It no longer has the issue of, I can't see inside, but now we have the ability to integrate and take this intelligent CRG map, add things on top of it that allow us to see in, control people getting in and out, and being able to coordinate everything that you guys have as prior investments and just make it that much more intelligent and that much more speed to get in there accurately and fast. And that's a brief demo of the SOAR and what we're doing as ACG in that strategic partnership. Mike, I'll turn it over to you, buddy.
Mr. Chairman, rest of the committee, that formally conducts the, or concludes the presentation if you have any questions.
I'm sure. Whoops. Go down just a little bit. Yeah. 'Cause I had you turned way up so they could hear it online. The where do I even start? I guess one thing we were curious about was, have you done this in Georgia? Have you got? And where at? Or can you tell? Or is it?
We currently have Habersham County school system. The entire school system is in the process of doing the
Okay.
itself. And then Truett McConnell University is a private university that is actually in the process of not only integrating CRG, but a portion of the SOAR as well.
Okay. The I guess the idea is when shoot, it's too loud. Is when other law enforcement enters the building. Yeah, I guess I've been to a few active shooter drills, and communications within the building are the toughest. And so, how does your system overcome? I know just like radio communication from one law enforcement to a command center outside is very tough in modern construction. How do you get around that? I mean,
So one of the biggest things that we're trying to accomplish is to enable everyone just to communicate with each other. Same exact problem that the military dealt with. My job specifically was to be reporting back to the command post, to be kind of controlling the we were speaking the same language, and I can say, hey, there's an issue on the eastern side of building 2 outside door 29. I just said in 2 seconds what before, without a graphic, would have taken me 2 minutes to say on the radio. So it enabled me to be very clear and concise. Additionally, I can show it on the mobile application. We have integrated everyone's phone numbers into the system. So when you look at education, one of the primary lessons of the 9/11 Commission report was interoperability and then also information sharing. So this is one information sharing. We're putting everyone on the same exact graphic. But the interoperability is we're enabling them to speak the same language. But also, what it does here is I'm just touch the button here. I can go in here and see what other police officers or first responders are on the network. And now I can get in here as an example. I'm assuming my partner is Alex. I have his phone number embedded into here. So when you look at all the police officers responding throughout a county, more often than not, they're not on the same radio system. They're not on the same computer dispatch program. They don't have the same record management system. What we want to make sure is that we enable everyone through the commercial networks to be able to communicate. Again, looking back on lessons learned at the war, when we started the war in 2001, we thought, when we kind of embarked upon that journey, we thought we were going to have this extreme advantage based on our GPS capability and our ability to communicate on the radio networks, and we didn't think the enemy had that. They just leveraged the mobile commercial network, and they had the same exact, if not better, communication than we did. We see this every day when we're going doing a different type of active or a different type of drill, and it's not just for. Please don't look at this as just when the really bad day occurs and we got to break this thing out. This is for daily use. We run a fire drill. We're trying to communicate that someone slipped and hurt their back, and the ambulance is pulling up to the gym. How do they pull up to the right door fast? How do they bring the right type of medical equipment to that location that the 911 call came in with? What we've seen a lot of times, based on what I just showed you on the profile, I can just immediately dial right through this. So you could be the command staff out in the parking lot, sir. I could be inside, and you would see my location. More often than not, the radio communication is, where are you right now? What door did you go through? What's your location in the structure? With this, you don't have to provide that information. I can ask less questions because I'm more informed. Additionally, we're speaking this, again, the big thing is speaking the same language, sir. So when I say, hey, I just went through door 29, I made a left on the blue hallway, and now I'm outside the art room, the command shed outside in 2 seconds understands exactly what you're talking about.
Because I guess in my mind, I had it like you're going to do it like Battleship. You're in C9. And that's how I play Battleship, but that's, so then you take it from that to refine it into that pinpoint area.
Yes, sir. We want to use the specific signage associated.
Okay.
We want to use the same language that's specific to the school. So when that teacher, who does not have access to this, gets on 911 and says, I'm Miss Jones, I have 12 children, and I'm in room 104, that everybody knows exactly what she's talking about. She's going to use the signage of the school that she's worked in for the last 20 years, and we want her to. There's no disagreement with that. But today, when she makes that phone call to 911, nobody knows where she's talking about inside the structure.
Right.
And then the game of Battleship is just kind of on top. I could use that to talk big to small, sir. I could say, go to grid square C9 and then use door 4. So you look on your map until you get to, and then you see door 4.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You had mapped the pulse. Do you see this application being used in private businesses also?
Yes, sir. We do. We don't. The whole moral foundation of the company was started on school safety. We're committed to that. We do schools for what it costs us to do schools. But to be honest with you, the private sector with no targeting, we do a lot of target sector locations. Unfortunately, I can discuss those offline, but promise their household names and you have their apps on your phone that we're doing all their facilities throughout the country. And the reason that comes, in professional sports teams, I look at it as it'd be difficult to have a municipal, county, or state officer want to carry the blueprints for a piece of private infrastructure on their phone, but everybody wants to carry the school blueprints. Everybody wants to do that. So now when we put this system in place, and they have a mobile app that has all the school building schematics on there, well, what we do in all the other states is the malls go on it, and the movie theaters, and the ball fields, and the county parks. Everything just gets uploaded onto that over time. So as we've seen in the other states we're working at, again, it starts with schools, and then very quickly there's a viral attribute to all the other private infrastructure.
I'll turn it over to, I think is that Chairman Benton, 25?
Thank you for coming today. Which one of you flew down?
I did, sir.
Okay. He flew all the way from New Jersey to come make this presentation today. So, wanted to ask if when you go into a school, is your cost based on the size of the school, the number of schools in the district. We have a lot of schools and we have a lot of systems that might like this system, but they can't afford maybe. Yeah.
The pricing is the schools are done, it's a price per mat, so every time we make a mat, it's right on $1,000. Every mat, every floor requires a mat, so if it's a two-story structure, that's 2 mats first floor, 1 mat first floor, 1 mat second floor, and then 1 mat exterior for that command and control, which is the parking lots, the roads in, egress, routes associated with that location. So it's floors plus 1. The average across the country right now is about, it's like 2.5 floors per school is the national average that we're seeing. So you're talking, about $2,500 a school is the average.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And just for me, just another question. So when you see, I guess you've got data that shows speed of response when law enforcement, first responders come on a scene, how much quicker they get to where they need to be with an accurate map rather than just relaying back and forth on radios or whatnot, I assume.
Yes, sir, we have a lot of data on that. The larger the location, the greater their reduction in time is. So we've done airports throughout the country. We do suspicious package exercises when they do it their way of responding, and then our way with the map. Our way is 60% faster every time. When you go to a smaller school, it's about 40% faster. And I'm talking a small one-story school to reduce the threat because, again, that collaborative environment we're enabling. We ran an exercise a couple weeks ago, and it was actually at a synagogue. And we ran one drill without the map, and then one drill with the map. And the one with the map, the one without the map, the first police officer gets there from that town, that jurisdiction, meets the rabbi in the parking lot, and the rabbi says, the bad guy came into my office, and then from my office went to the kitchen, and the kitchen he went to the prayer room. Well, that first responder, although he'd been on the job for 20 years and driven by that building literally every day, had never been in the building before. So had no idea where the kitchen, his office, and the prayer room was. The next time we reset the exercise, everybody had the same piece of paper, and the rabbi looked at it and said, he's right here. The same amount of information on the first rep that was not valuable, the second time it was invaluable. And the efficiencies don't just stop in the initial response. The DHS has published that these events last between 4 and 8 minutes, and I disagree with that. The event is not over until every single person's at the proper level of medical attention. That's, when the bad thing really happens, that's only the beginning of this. The second that the killing stops or the incident is over, it's really just beginning. It becomes a PhD level management problem set at that point. How do you manage EMTs and firemen and emergency management professionals and parents and teachers and police officers from the county, state, and local level if you don't have something to talk off? And we have a lot of reps going back to the military. Special operations will not go out to conduct an operation unless we have these maps because it's imperative just so we can communicate with each other.
Okay, thank you. Representative Prince had a question also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thanks for the presentation. A lot of good information, provides this common operating picture. My question is, who sees this common operating picture? Is it the police officers? Is it the school system? That's one. And then the second is the interoperability of how is this, does it mix into with the I say law enforcement systems? Does it has the ability to be hacked and some of these things change?
First question, I'll actually answer the second question first, sir, about the security of it. When we put the system into the cloud, it's a very secure environment. That's the same exact place that our government keeps some of its most secret documents is in cloud-based environment. The security is better there. We can protect a lot better in that environment. And it's a secure instance of the Amazon Web Service. Security is not necessarily a problem for the mapping. When it comes to directly being able to ingest it into the existing platforms today, so 95% of police departments and me to tell us who else is responding to that. We're going to ask who does our dispatching, where is the PSAP, the 911 call center. We're going to make sure that when we implement this, we implement it at the chain of command, to the chain of custody, whoever's going to respond to this critical incident. If the county has the district attorney's office or a prosecutor's office, we're going to place it there. If they have a sheriff, we're going to place it with the sheriff's deputies. We're going to place it with the state officials. We're going to make sure that anyone that would potentially touch this event is going to have access to it. The schools also have access to it. So it's just a map. It's just a very up-to-date, accurate map. We push that back to the schools with instructions and a policy to make sure it's printed out and pre-staged.
Yeah, and you, I'm sorry, no, go ahead.
So if you're, let's say, an example, ATF officer, and you're not from the area, but your child goes to school, you can respond and still have access to the common operating picture, sir.
Okay. Last thing is that you mentioned the cost of different floors and different things like that. Now, when schools are upgraded, changed, and things like that, is that an additional cost, or you guys just go in and change the software and bam, we got it?
We have to go and create the same base layer again, sir. It's not the same full cost, but we've seen in other state initiatives. So there's a couple schools or states throughout the country that are, New Jersey is where this starts. That's where I'm from, sir. So we did, kind of knock down doors for the first 2 years. It was very a bottom-up approach. Other states throughout the country, the government's looked at it and said, this is a have-to-have for all the schools, and they've gone top-down. But as you can imagine, when you're doing 4,000 schools in a clip, by the time you hit school number 3,000, number one is
Changing,
things. So we just roll them onto a maintenance plan, sir, to make it's not full cost, it's about 20% just to maintain those.
Yeah, because I know that's in our area. That's one of the things is the growth that we're having in our schools. We built the schools a couple of years ago, but then with the influx of people, we started to put portables out there and outside of the building. So more has been added on.
And that's why that this never started as a business opportunity, sir. It was a moral obligation for the individuals we started the business with. And as we started to roll it out, we never, who would have thought that the schools changed every 2 years. So if you asked me 2 years ago if we did that, we'd say, no, the schools don't change. Well, now we've had thousands of reps. We make sure we keep those up to date. So on an annual basis, we're contacting that school, and have you changed anything? If you have, okay, what are those changes? We'll adjust that. If not, no big deal. Yes, sir.
And so on the cost of this, I guess one thing we were just looking at real quickly on cameras. I mean, if I have an existing, a lot of schools have invested a tremendous amount of dollars on cameras and door sensors, et cetera, whatever it's out there. Now, does something like yours integrate with them, or do they have to go reload?
Great question, sir. So yes, it does. That's what our partners at ACG specialize in, is that specific type of integration. And to your exact point of the door sensor goes off, and that's great. The door sensor goes off, and the police department's informed that there's an alarm going off at door 7. But if you don't know what side of the building door 7's on, how do you know which parking lot to go to make an appropriate response?
But the cost,
There's no additional cost in that.
yeah, we're not resensoring, re-cameraing.
It's just because the mapping, the way it's done, sir, every pixel in the background of that picture is smart. So when we overlay the picture of a camera, we've done that in Truett, McConnell, as they put a gunshot detection system, there's a latch and launch associated with that. And when they go and put the door sensor, so when someone goes into the cafeteria, that's activated on top of that graphic. So this just kind of becomes the map on the background, sir. There's no additional cost.
Okay. And so I assume then everything's on a cloud. I mean, that's part of the deal, I would assume, the system. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. So the mapping can be done individually. In order to disseminate it, it's better if that cloud system's in place to make sure we can get there. What we've seen every time is that a lot of the school districts will go on, as Habersham's coming on right now, there is no cloud system in place. They're just looking at, we want to get our building schematics up to date. We want to put them into the police cars. We want to make sure we know that everybody has an up-to-date picture of where we are. That will naturally transition, like it has everywhere else in the country, sir, to a server going in place. Because all the other schools in that county, public, private institutions, they'll come online, and at that point, that server, really just that filing cabinet, there'll become a need for it. Other locations where you see that this viral rollout of it is when the government will go and put a server in place, and then inform the schools or even go pay for it, and then very quickly it fills up in a matter of 6 months.
But other folks, anybody else? Well, thank you. It's been very interesting. I'm sure we have all your contact information, et cetera, in the handouts you gave us. So does having that data on speed of response in this? I think that's something everybody really wants to know about is, how does it improve? I'd sure like to see that. Well, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Benton, for having them. All right, so now we're going to swap over to just paperwork for a few minutes. If you'll take a minute, we got your draft. You see my big draft proposal that Miss Sarah has worked on very hard. I know when we started this, we knew it was going to be complex, and the speaker knew all of y'all were up to it to learn about all this, and we've absolutely learned a lot. We've learned a lot about what folks think about what we need to do to keep our schools safe. I've really enjoyed the frank discussion, that we've had, especially with people offline and even in here, about what we need to do. And I've really been impressed on how our school systems and how serious they've taken this issue. I think there's no doubt about it because it's something that's on everybody's mind. Our constituents are demanding and that we really work hard on this subject. I know Governor-elect Kemp and Lieutenant Governor-elect Duncan, along with our speaker, know this is a very important issue and we'll be working on it in 2019. If you look on the last page of your draft recommendation, these are some of our recommendations. And if you look at mine, I've made changes to it and additions to it. Sarah looked at it like, what? No. But I just want to just kind of go over them just out loud just for a minute. I think one thing we've seen through meetings here, the meetings with the Federal School Safety Committee and looking online and just learning about it is we need for this initially really to be a governor-led statewide threat management thing, is to coordinate school safety resources from all these executive branch agencies and other stakeholders, like I say, such as local school districts and local law enforcement. The team would be tasked to identifying model standards and best practices for school systems and local law enforcement. We list a long list of things that we've all talked about, like the threat assessment model that the Secret Service done. They do it for the president. Why not we're doing it for our kids? The boards, they've got to be taken seriously. Developing some guidelines of best practices for safety infrastructure, construction, and renovations that are done. It's one of those information sharing things that I think that group can do better than anybody. We've also talked last meeting about the statewide radio communications network and also within schools. So that's a very important thing we've got to work on. Expanding the awareness of See Something, Say Something app. I've just taken time the last month when I see a 14-year-old with their parent, I ask them about that app. And I hope you've done the same, and you'll find that just about none of them know about it. And that's kind of concerns me because that's something we're kind of basing some of our response on. One thing that I think we saw in the last meeting is current SRO training. Something we need to really look at, and that would come from the governor's side, is a very formal what we want SROs to be trained in, because that group of people will expand. The next dot down there is, we'll work on legislation similar to what we did last year to exclude the creation of those school safety plans to open records so they can go on in a closed session so that all these different groups can be part of it and move on it. One thing I talked to most of you about during the special session was, this is expensive. And I think there's no doubt about it. And looking at the possibility of opening eSPLOST specifically for school security. That's going to be, like it says, a constitutional amendment. I think our desire would be very tightly drawn around it. They can use eSPLOST, of course, now for construction changes and all that. But maybe for hiring SROs and even mental health counselors that would get right down to the nitty-gritty, as we heard the young people reiterate that counselors are great, but this really isn't their thing, and we need to look at doing that. We've heard that repeatedly. increase the number of mental health counselors available in school systems. You know, there's a shortage of those. It's going to be hard to do. It's going to take some time to get enough to meet the needs of our state. But in the meantime, we've got, as Chairman Ballinger said, the community service boards that are out there doing a lot of work. You know, we talk about PBIS, and Dr. McGibney was here a little bit ago, talked about school climate. We learned how important it was and how we'll continue to do that, and how eSPLOS could be used for training that could help students and teachers. Those are just the general recommendations that I've thought about. And it's like I asked you on the form, if you'll get back to me by December the 6th, and of course we're able to talk about it now if anybody has any ideas additionally, so that we can add this to what we turn into the speaker and start looking at, you know, and I also have made Governor-elect Kemp aware of what we're doing here and the desire to have it as a governor-led issue, because it's going to take that much horsepower to make this thing go. And yes, I have. Asked me that I had conversation with the staff. Yes, I have. And they're positive. You know, I think this is going to be a priority for everyone to make sure we do something. And the Senate's also looking at doing the same. Chairman Dempsey?
Thank you, Rick and Sarah. This is great. It's good. Boiled it down to some real doable work, I think, which is always important in a study committee, to try to make sure that we can see success in it. When you talk about the mental health counselors, I think we need to tighten up what those qualifications are, because there's a broad spectrum of mental health counselors. And let's make sure that they are trained in everything, and I think Dr. McGibney could help us in many ways on that, on what is needed, really needed in that, because this would be a great opportunity to sort of be able to focus on that. And it's an opportunity that I think that schools have wanted but have not had because of the financial challenge that is. But if we could put some real qualifiers, if we need to come up with the training necessary or the mechanism to help them require that, but they need to be certified at a lot of levels at this point.
Yes, ma'am, I agree. And I think when we talk about opening eSPLOS up to something like this, for it to pass the public smell test, it would have to be that tight, because I think they would really want to see us ensuring that's spent the right way. And I know you've been a great champion of mental health and treating it. So, excuse me, I'm sorry.
So much that we need, and you know, it hadn't been possible to do and deliver all the other services that must be delivered, but I think it's a real opportunity with this to really go in there and do kind of a deep dive on it.
I look forward to you helping me, us, all of us. Anybody else have any comments? Okay. Chairman Ballinger? None? Well, we'll have this out for public handing out probably after December the 6th. And when Trustee Miss Sarah here looks at any changes we'd like to make, if any out there in public have any other comments, please contact me. Contact Sarah, contact Chairman Ballinger, so we can add those things if you've thought of them and hadn't in the meantime. But with that, I adjourn this meeting. We thank you for your attendance and appreciate you guys. I didn't say thank you to Julius for being here too, our fine attorney.